Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this Northshire Presents virtual event. I'm Rachel Person, Event Director for Northshire Bookstores, with store locations in Saratoga Springs, New York, and Manchester Center, Vermont, and online at northshire.com. Thank you so much for your incredible loyalty and support. It means the world to all of us at Northshire, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us this evening for this Rep Picks event. We have a slightly smaller cast of sales reps than we had planned on this evening due to illness. So when you check out the blog posts that I'll be posting in the chat in a moment, that include all of the titles that will be discussed tonight, there are a bunch of extra titles because I figured that since our wonderful rep from Scholastic Books was going to be recommending a lot of children's books, and children's books are the thing we get the most questions about this time of year, I thought that her suggestions would still be helpful to you, so I left those in there for your reference. So in just a minute, I'll be posting links in the chat to both of the blog posts. We had so many books to be talked about that there are two. You will see all of the books that Emily Crow will be speaking about this evening are in the blog post that is listed as Book Picks Part 2. And Katrina's books are split between Book Picks Part 1 and Book Picks Part 2. So without further ado, I'm going to post those links in the chat for everyone to take a look at. And I'm going to turn things over to Emily Crow, who is one of our wonderful sales reps for Penguin Random House, who will be talking about some terrific books this evening. So Emily, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Northshire presentation tonight. Give me just 1 second while I get my screen sharing taken care of. It'll take me just 1 second here. And I think we're good. Can I get visual confirmation?
It is not up yet, Emily.
It is
Nope.
not. Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, everybody. Let me try this again. And how about now?
Still not. Do you want me to share it from my computer?
Shoot, it just worked when we tested it. Let me give it the old college try and see if we can do it one more time, and then yes, I will. But like, we just tried this, so I'm sorry, everybody. I thank you for your patience.
It was working perfectly 5 minutes ago.
It has been a day of weird IT, so I apologize. How about now? Is it working now?
Nope, still not. So I'm going to go ahead and share from mine.
Shoot, I'm so sorry, everybody.
Let's see. Oh, and now I've lost it. What is going on? I am sorry, crew.
Should we go to Katrina first?
Why don't we go to Katrina first? Katrina, are you game to swap it out and be the one to go on first?
Sure. And it's looking like, let's see. Did it share?
It shared.
All right.
But your video is still off, so you may want to just turn your video on, and Emily, you can turn your video off.
Okay. Hi. I think we're set. Sorry about that. Using Zoom is somehow I should have learned it during the pandemic and didn't quite totally manage it. I'm Katrina Cruza. I sell Hachette books. And tonight I'm kind of looking at this presentation like a way to find the perfect gift for everybody on your list. And so every book is labeled with who it's good for and then some. So I'm starting out with a work of fiction. Oh, that's weird. Hold on. Am I in, oh, I'm not in presentation mode, am I? There we go. Sorry about that. First off is a book that hasn't published yet, but it's going to publish on December 3rd. So this is something to look forward to. I Might Be in Trouble is Danielle Alleman's first adult book. He wrote YA, and I read his YA and I liked it, but this is oh so much better. The book is about an author who has severe writer's block. So one night he hooks up with a date on Tinder. They hit it off. He brings the man home. And in the morning, the man is dead in his bed. Yes, this book is, I call, a mix between The Flight Attendant and Weekend at Bernie's, because he doesn't know what to do. So, and he's kind of lonely. So he ends up calling his agent, and his agent says, well, it would be bad for your career to have a body found in your bed. And so she comes and meets him, and they end up bringing this body all around Manhattan. And so that's the first half of the book. It is funny, it is poignant, and then it runs into some other issues because it turns out the man he hooked up with is married to a journalist who, of course, wants to find out how his husband died. So, highly recommended. I would give this to anybody who likes fiction, anybody who likes books that are a little quirky. It's just a really, really fun read. Next up is for the fiction lover, but maybe a fiction lover who likes a slightly shorter book. The Lantern on Lost Memories. This book is one of those little Japanese books with a cat on the cover, and yes, it fits that, but it goes a little deeper. So this is about a photography store where in the back room, the man will help show you your memories at the end of your life. And so we get to know the characters in this book through their screenshotted memories of that they see in this back room. It's a really slight book, but it is absolutely lovely. It's magical realism at its best. Next up, for the memoir lover in your life, we have Connie. This is Connie Chung's memoir. It is surprisingly funny. It's interesting. Connie was the first Asian, I think Asian person, not just Asian American woman, to become a broadcast journalism to the top notch. She set a goal for herself of taking over Walter Cronkite's chair, and she did that. She is married to Maury Povich, but she ensures that she knows who the father of all her children are. She is just incredibly funny and moving, and she has such a sharp brain. It's just a delight to also relive journalism and the history of journalism when it had integrity, I would say. Next up is a gift for stocking stuffers and little gift books. The Little Frog's Guide to Self-Care. Mabel Ikwe is an artist out in California, and this is technically a self-help book, but it's a feel-good book is how I would describe it. Little Frog is a frog with a toadstool hat and high heel shoes, sometimes sandals, sometimes above the knee boots, who gives you life advice and lets you know it's okay to love yourself and that sometimes things get hard. It's only $11.99. It's a small trim size, so this is actually a perfect book for impulse buys as well. Next up, I have a book. This is in the Northeast, we have this amazing thing where so many people love love science and love art. And they're different parts of your brain, but they work together. And Maria Popova has just really tied into that. So This is a collection of 15 short essays. Each one has an absolutely lovely illustration. And I apologize, my screenshots were low res. That's what was up on my server. But all of the art is the quality of the book jacket that you see. And so she writes about 15 science wonders, pairs it with a lovely illustration, and then there is a poem by a well-known poet as well, such as Emily Dickinson, and the poets are writing on the same subject area as the essays. And no essay is more than 5 pages, so you're not going to get super bogged down in heavy science writing. Next up is a gift for the music lover in your life. This is a book that there was so much mystique, and did it actually exist? And the answer is yes. Robert Hunter was one of the founding members of the Grateful Dead. And he kept a detailed journal and writings about what it was like to be a musician starting out. And this is that journal and book put together for anybody who admires the Grateful Dead. This is a no-brainer gift. It is filled with San Francisco in the 60s. There is just so much great stuff. And the one thing I really learned is also how many Grateful Dead fans there are out there. I knew there were a lot, but when this book was announced, they all came out of the woodwork. It was amazing. We have a foreword by John Mayer because he currently tours with Dead and Company. And so this all means a lot to him as well. Next up is the gift for the essay lover, The Book of More Delights by Ross Gay. This is now out in paperback, so it's an affordable gift. Ross Gay's first book was The Book of Delights, and what he did was he decided he was going to find one thing in every day that made him feel happiness. And when he started this project, he thought, oh, it's going to be really tough. I better, when I see things that make me happy, I better stockpile them, because otherwise I'll never have enough to do a whole year's worth. But what he found was the more you find things that make you happy, the more things you see that make you happy. And so his world actually expanded. And these delights could be everything from being able to pick fruit from a neighbor's tree to the pattern of cracks in the sidewalk. They seem really little, but when you actually observe them, it just does bring so much happiness. All right, the next book is, I say it's for drink lovers, but I also say this book is if you entertain. If you live in a neighborhood where people might drop by, this book is perfect. Freezer Door Cocktails, J.M. Hirsch, the author, he is the drinks guru at Milk Street. And the whole premise of this book is you can buy a bottle of, say, vodka and pour off a little bit and put in the mixers, and you shake it up and you can just make it right in the bottle and store it in your freezer. I have found mason jars work really well because they're squatter and they fit better in my freezer. But there's science involved because it needs to be able to stay in the freezer without freezing solid. And because alcohol never goes off, you can just make up a batch of something, say gingerbread martinis for the holidays, and have it sitting there. And if people drop by, you can say, oh, would you like a gingerbread martini? And people will think, wow, you're so fancy. But I will also say, not only do these use the science and are simple, but they also really taste good. My husband is like, I don't need to go out to a bar anymore because I just want to drink what's in the freezer door. Next up is a gift book for animal and nature lovers around. I'm sure you're all aware of Atlas Obscura. This time they're pointing their lens towards the natural world. So animals, land masses, places. There are weird frogs and weird toads and things with funny spiky bits, or apes that end up going into hot springs. It's the type of book where you buy it because, oh yeah, I like nature, and then you just find yourself sucked in, and it's 5 hours later and you think, oh, I still have to do the dishes. I really have to put this book down. Next up, sometimes we have friends who we know love books, but we don't know what they've read. And so this is a great gift for them because you don't want to buy them a duplicate book. This is a really pretty keepsake box, which comes in the store belly banded. But when you open it up, inside there are bookmarks and a little notebook and book plates. And then there's a tray that lifts out, and underneath there are some greeting cards and postcards, some stickers, a notepad. So it's just a really lovely gift for anybody who loves books. Next up, I'm back to stocking stuffers because I really like stocking stuffers. I didn't have a stocking until I was 19 years old, and I think this might be part of it, but this is great. This is the teeny tiny Christmas turntable. This comes in a little box that's like probably 3 inches by 2 inches, by 2 inches. And inside there is a little record player, and we all know records are super hot right now. And there are 3 little records, each in their own sleeve, which you can put on the turntable, and it will play a 30-second musical clip from that from the song. So super fun, great to give to any music lover out there. If you have someone in your life who doesn't like Christmas music, we also do make one that is just the teeny tiny turntable with 3 albums that are non-musically for Christmas. Next up for the crafter in your life is the vintage postcard collage kit. I wondered when this was presented to us what the quality of the postcards would be inside of this. So this is a magnetic keepsake gift box, which has a book that teaches you how to collage postcards and some materials to put on the postcards. But the real key in this is there are 100 vintage reproduction postcards, and they're really good quality. And on the back of them, you can actually mail them to people. And I have found that I go to this kit a lot to make gift tags, and usually I just write on the back of the postcard, but sometimes I'll cut them down to make them more gifty. But it's lovely, and there's lots of Victoriana in there to share. Next up, for the sports lover in your life, the Boston Globe's Story of the Celtics. So this goes from about the 1950s all the way up through the 2024 championship win last year. People in New England love sports. I wouldn't have the first clue what to give to somebody who likes sports because I'm not a huge sports person. And so this is super. It's just all the newspaper pictures and articles throughout history from 1946. Next up, Emily and I spend a lot of our time driving around New England, but a lot of people who travel don't actually like to fly. And also, we live in this really incredible place. So Moon updated New England road trips just this past September, and it covers all of New England. There are trips that are short, just 2 or 3 days, or they can be put together to a 2 to 3 week epic road trip around the whole region. Every chapter or area starts with highlights of the trips. It'll tell you good places to stay interesting places to visit, local wineries and breweries to go to. There's just so much good information packed in here, and it's just, I've learned things and found places to go as I'm driving around New England, which I would have never found without this book. Okay, moving from adult books to kids' books. I start with Night Owl and Early Bird by Christopher Denise. His first book was Night Owl, and that came out a few years ago and won the Caldecott honor. So Night Owl is a pygmy owl who all his life dreamed about joining the Owl Corps. And so nobody thought he could do it in the first book. And now he has the newest recruit who really wants to be a night owl is Early Bird. But of course, owls are up all night, but birds are only, they sleep at night and wake up at dawn, just as owls are going to sleep. And so they have to learn how to work together. This artwork is absolutely stunning. There's so much personality in these pictures. Any child would love it. The story is great, and it's one you can read again and again. I will say, first book is great. This book is great, and there's even available a plush night owl for people who want to go a little broader than just a book. And then also in the picture book realm, A Mouse Family Christmas. So the mice live in the attic of this family's house, and it's Christmas Eve, and they're busy getting their Christmas all set up. And it reminded me a bit of The Borrowers, the way all these little mice were using human things to make decorations. But they noticed that downstairs in the ground level of the house, there's a Christmas tree, but it's not decorated. There's no warmth and joy coming from the house. And so they discover that the man who lives in the house, nobody's there to share his Christmas. And what is Christmas without sharing of love? And so the mice decide to come down, and you can't see it in the bottom picture with the man in it, but the mice are all over the table trying to cheer him up. And it's a really charming story about the joy of sharing love at the holidays. Moving on to middle grade, many of you, I'm sure, have read The Wild Robot. This is the movie tie-in cover. There is also a traditional cover available. This movie came out this September. It had, I think, a 99% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Excuse me. Peter Brown's story is absolutely amazing. I normally would not put up a movie tie-in cover, but part of this movie tie-in edition, it has a lot of Peter Brown's sketches on how he was coming up with ideas to draw the wild robot. If you don't know the story, the robot's name is Roz, and she was on a cargo ship and they hit a storm at sea, and she ends up washing up on an island. And on this island, there are no humans, but she is programmed to fulfill needs and make whoever she's with just be taken care of. And so a gosling imprints on her, and she is to become basically the gosling's mother and teach it and help it survive to the point where it can fledge. It is a lovely story about nature and the power of keeping things wild. Also for middle grade and totally different, I have the Millicent Quibb School of Etiquette for Young Ladies of Mad Science by Kate McKinnon. And yes, it is that Kate McKinnon of Weird Barbie and SNL fame. I absolutely loved this book. of course, it has humor in it because it is Kate McKinnon. It has all the things I loved when I was like 10 years old in a book. It had weird, slimy slugs. It had map and papers. It has footnotes, which I always think are a great sign in a middle grade book. It makes you laugh, it makes you think. And the best bit is it's the start of a series. It is just absolutely a great escape and a great family read together book. And then lastly, I have a book for kids 14 and up because everybody needs a book. Immortal Dark. This is definitely dark academia vampire story with romantasy. Some books have love triangles. This one has a love quadrilateral in it. There's so much going on. It is a bit gritty, I will admit, but I actually think for this age range, gritty books are also really popular. And so this also will have a sequel, and people were so excited about this book. We had a special edition for the first printing, and I think that sold out in 3 weeks, and that never happened. So this is the normal edition cover, which is equally gorgeous. So you will not go wrong with this one either. And that is what I have for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katrina. That's awesome. I know that my both holiday list and personal reading list just got a lot longer. So thank you so much for that. So next up, we think that Emily has solved her technical difficulties. And if not, I have solved my technical difficulties. So one of us is going to be able to share Emily's presentation, but we're going to have Emily try first. And now we have, for real, Emily Crow from Penguin Random House to share her books.
Okay. Do you see anything being shared now?
It is working. Huzzah.
Oh, huzzah. Okay. Then let me go. Is it in presentation mode or not?
It is not yet in presentation mode.
Okay. And
But
how
now
about
it is.
now?
Yes, now it
Okay.
is.
Amazing. Okay, everybody, thank you for the hiccups and thank you for your, I'm sorry. Sorry for the hiccups. Thank you for your patience. And we'll see if we can get going here. Katrina is a hard act to follow. So I'll just jump in, and hopefully I have something for everyone too, just as much as she did, although sadly I don't have any of the fun, wonderful children's books that she has. The first book I want to talk about tonight is called Backyard Chronicles by Amy Tan. You might know the name Amy Tan because she's the author of The Joy Luck Club and various other bestsellers. Well, in 2020, when we were all sort of sequestered in our own spaces, Amy Tan took to her backyard and discovered that late in life, she turned out to be an avid bird watcher and fan. And so I'm just going to go through a couple of these slides here. This book is, it shows her original sketches that she made because we all knew that she was a really brilliant writer. This book is showing us that she is in fact also a very capable sketch artist as well. So this book has 132 sketches reproduced here. We also have some actual pages reproduced that show her handwriting and her actual journals that she kept during 2020 while she was discovering this love of bird watching. And David Sibley was so impressed by this book that he wrote the foreword, and NPR just declared it that it was one of their best books of the year for 2024. Next up, I have this biography of Monet by Jackie Wohlschlager. You could say that Monet is arguably the most famous and most influential artist of the 19th century. I think what has slightly been less known until now is that he's also a very dreamy looking young man here. This book covers his whole life and his work, including how his painting changed significantly at 3 different times in his life, depending on who the woman at the center of his life was. This book has already received starred reviews from every major outlet, And it was published in the UK earlier this year, and there it won the Longford Prize and the Franco Award, which is for history. It is getting raves here in the US as well, and I've got a few plates to show you here, as well as what the New York Times said. This is a book to be savored like an orange candied in honey. It is an intoxicating read. Next up, I have The Wide, Wide Sea by Hampton Sides. Hampton Sides is here exploring Captain Cook's final voyage to the South Pacific. Captain Cook made various travels around the world, and at the time was thought of as the most accomplished explorer in British history. What we are now coming to know is that he has a complicated legacy as part of that British history, which is to say this author is not ignoring the darker sides of imperialism, which shaped almost everything about Captain Cook's career. And this book is also dipping into how he was killed by Native Hawaiians on his last voyage around the world. Hampton Sides is not as well known as Eric Larson or David Grann, but his writing and his storytelling are just as good as those two writers. So if you love a really good narrative nonfiction that is exploring history and is told with a propulsive writing style, this one is the one for you. Next up, this is the heaviest book that I want to talk about tonight, and I mean that both literally and figuratively. This is No Road Leading Back by Chris Heath. And this is the story of the 70,000 Jews who were murdered by Nazis in the forest of Ponar in Lithuania. And as you would expect, the Nazis then realized that they had to do something with those 70,000 corpses. And so they forced a very small group of Jews to dig a mass grave for those people. And of course, the understanding was that that small group of Jews building the grave would be thrown into it at the end as well. Little did they know that this was a very enterprising and resilient group. And using only spoons and their bare hands, they were able to dig a tunnel to freedom. So this book is really big and rigorously researched, and it also has a propulsive narrative. So if you've read Ben McIntyre or Clint Smith, you'll have an idea of what the feel of this read is like. All Holocaust stories are important. This one has the added bonus that there actually is a small hint of hope as you're reading to propel you forward through these almost 700 pages. This is the sort of book that is for readers of history and anybody who loves stories of survival and stories of the human spirit. Okay, next up is Every Valley by Charles King. The subtotal here, if you can't read it on the slide, it says The Desperate Lives and Troubled Times That Made Handel's Messiah. You could say that the Messiah is one of the greatest pieces of participatory art that has ever been created. Not only is it performed around the country and around the world every holiday season, it's also a work of art that you can go and join into and sing along with yourself. In 2023, there were 30 different Messiah sing-alongs in New England and upstate New York alone, where you could just go and enjoy listening to it if you wanted to, but if you wanted to sing along, the whole audience was encouraged to. So this is the untold story of the men and women behind the making of the Messiah. And here we get this really incredible cross-section of European and North American history. So it's the 18th century, and it was in fact the Enlightenment, which was a time of astonishing creativity. But I think sometimes people forget that it was also a time plagued by war and slavery and other fallouts of empire. This is the very best kind of nonfiction as far as I'm concerned, because I love books that take a very narrow lens to explore the depth and breadth of humanity of one period of time. And then they use that lens to shine a light on our own time and our own understanding of the world. And if that's not enough, take a look at what these end papers look like. These are facsimiles of Handel's handwritten manuscript of the oratorio. And the top one is the front end paper, and the bottom one is the rear end paper. And it's just a beautiful book as object. And this is going to work whether you are a history reader, a music lover, or, if I can be a little bit cheesy for a second, if you're just interested in books of philosophical self-betterment. Moving right along to Vanishing Treasures by Catherine Rundell. This is one of my favorite nonfiction books of the fall, and it is just a treasure from beginning to end. It is a collection of mini essays on interesting animals that are nevertheless endangered. Each essay is 3 to 5 pages long, and you also have these really great 2-page spreads of illustrations per animal. So here we've got the giraffe and the crow, and I'm going to let you take a look at this other selection of blurbs while I go on to describe just why I love this book so much. This is the sort of book that if you read it, you will be absolutely the hit of any cocktail or holiday party that you attend this year, because you are going to be filled with so many fascinating facts to drop into conversation. One of my favorite ones was that there is, in fact, today a Greenland shark circling the globe that was alive during Shakespeare's time. So hundreds of years old. What this shark has seen, man, seriously. My other tidbit that I particularly enjoy, because I have a little bit of a macabre nature, is that it might have been a giant hermit crab that ate Amelia Earhart's body. And that is why no trace of her body was ever found except for a small pile of human bones. And those are just 2 of the wonderful tidbits that await you if you dip into this one. Okay, next up, this is Paper Boat by Margaret Atwood, new and selected poems from 1961 to 2023. So that means that basically Margaret Atwood has been publishing poetry for longer than I have been alive. So she has been not just writing, but publishing poetry for 62 years. You're getting 6 decades worth of poetry in this one beautiful book. A lot of readers don't know that Margaret Atwood was actually a poet before she became a novelist, and in fact, she still readily self-identifies as a poet. And these poems will convince you that she belongs in the same pantheon as Mary Oliver and Maya Angelou. And now we have Here by Richard McGuire. I don't usually talk about graphic novels during presentations like these, much less graphic novels that were published a decade ago, but this book is so unusual, and it is back in the eye of pop culture right now because it is the basis of the new film starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. So I'm going to go on to a couple of page spreads here, and I don't know how closely you can lean in and see it, but each page spread has a small date in the top left-hand corner of the page spread. And that date in the upper left-hand corner applies to most of what is happening in the photo. But as you can see here, there are tiny little squares and rectangles that are inset within that major date. And so it is showing what is happening on a different timeline, but in that very same space. So in this case, in 1402, we're seeing that a Native American is shooting a bow. And we have in 1972, a living room done in these, harvest gold tones. And then on the lower page here, we see that in 3 billion BCE, that there was just this, purple and pink. Maybe this was a sunset and what this looked like in prehistory of the human age. And then in the other inset from 1870, we see an artist there on a picnic about to sketch a young woman. And then that other subset is 1402, showing an arrow that was just shot in the previous page spread. And here in this one, the blue section is 1915. The bison in the middle is showing what was happening in that same space in 10,000 BCE. And then the other subset was showing you what was happening in 1970. So this book is like opening these trans-temporal windows. And for any of you who read the magnificent Daniel Mason book, North Woods, that came out last year, this is the graphic novel equivalent of that amazing book. Okay, now I am switching over to the fiction realm. Held by Anne Michaels is a literary novel of the highest order. It opens in World War I, and it follows a soldier in World War I and how he has to learn to compartmentalize his past from his present once he goes back home to England. And then it follows one person in each generation down the line through this family, and it's tracing generational trauma in this single kaleidoscopic narrative. Anne Michaels is also a poet, so the language here is luminous and perfect. This book was a finalist for the Booker Prize this year and the Giller Prize. Those are the two major literary prizes from the UK and Canada, respectively. And it is a book to read if you love just like sheer lyrical perfection and an ending that absolutely satisfies the reader. And moving in a slightly different direction, but still within the fiction realm, this is Passion Tide by Monique Rafi. And this is the story of what happens when a female musician is found murdered on a small Caribbean island after the last night of carnival. And this body is just one in a long line of women who have been killed around the island. And these outraged local women have had enough, and they want to take matters into their own hands. So this book ends up being part police procedural, but also part protest novel. And it offers a really great and thoughtful cross-section of class and race and gender that is pretty rare in crime novels. Stories that are a fight against either state or church-sanctioned misogyny are kind of my jam, and this is a particularly good example. It happens to be based on a true story of a murder in Trinidad that happened about a decade ago, and this one reads like a mix of Marlon James and Margaret Atwood, if you have read those excellent writers. And all right, Frozen River. So Ariel Lawhon's book came out last year in hardcover and is brand new in paperback right now. And it was a bestseller last year, and it is the story of the real life Martha Ballard. She was an 18th century midwife, and she was caught up in a really shocking rape and murder trial that was taking place in what was then the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was before the US became a country. The catch is that the judge presiding over this trial is himself implicated in both the murder and the rape, and it is only Martha Ballard's testimony that stands in his way. So at a time when many women weren't even literate, Martha Ballard sets herself apart because it is her midwifery diary that allows her to give official public testimony during a time women weren't even allowed in the court. It is the sort of book where if you love plucking a person from the historical record and writing a story about them so that you are erasing their obscurity because they're absolutely fascinating, this is the one for you. And this next book is for any of you who already read and loved Frozen River. This one is going to be the one for you. So this is The Mesmerist by Caroline Woods, and it's another one of those sort of stranger than fiction true crime cases. And so it is looking at a small collection of women in 1890s Minneapolis. So it's giving us the really seedy underbelly of the Gilded Age. And it is introducing readers to one of the very first known serial killers in America. So add in dinner parties and seances, gambling dens, and a criminal mastermind with the face of an angel, and you've got yourself a page-turning read here. And then moving in a slightly lighter direction, this is Blood Test by Charles Baxter. And in this book, you get to meet Brock Hobson. He is this mild-mannered Midwestern insurance salesman. His wife has left him for a macho contractor, and he has 2 teenagers who largely ignore him. And then he happens to take a blood test that tells him that he has a predisposition for murder. And this mild-mannered insurance salesman has to rethink what his life has led to up until this point. And this book is asking you what you would do. And like, seriously, what would you do if you discovered that you have this predisposition for murder? One of the things that I love about Charles Baxter is that he treats his characters with a real generosity of spirit and a very gentle humor. He's essentially the Richard Russo of the Midwest, so he's beloved and brilliant, and he really deserves a much wider readership than what he has. And hopefully the fact that NPR has picked this as one of their best books of the year will help him get that readership. Okay, and then that takes us to Mina's Matchbox by Yoko Ogawa. This is a really introspective novel. It is about an affluent Japanese family, and they are navigating buried secrets. And then they have a young house guest who comes to stay with them, and that young house guest starts to uncover some of those secrets. It is a very quiet novel, and it's just filled with like this nostalgia and melancholy. And Yoko Ogawa is brilliantly able to conjure that enchantment of childhood. There's, in some parts of the narrative, there's like this dreamy separateness to it. If you've read The Housekeeper and the Professor, this is the same author. And this author has taken home almost every major literary prize that Japan has to offer. So this is the book that would be for the thoughtful reader on your list, especially anybody who values world literature. And now for something completely different. This is one of my favorite novels of the summer. It is Nicked by M.T. Anderson. This is a total romp of a novel. It is the story of a hapless monk and a professional thief who are basically hired to sail from Italy to Turkey and steal the bones of St. Nicholas, because as a saint, his bones have healing powers and a plague is hitting 11th century Italy. So this is so much fun. It is queer, it is funny, it is Our Flag Meets Death meets Ocean's 11, or as NPR quipped, it's Ocean's 11th century. It is utterly unlike anything you've read before, and it is so worth your time. Okay, coming up, nearing the end here, Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. This one came out at the beginning of the year, but I knew even then it was going to be one of my favorite novels of the year. Kaveh Akbar is a poet by trade. This is his very first novel, and it is the story of a brand new, sober, orphaned son of Iranian immigrants. And that orphaned son is trying to write a book. And when he feels stuck in the writing, he's got a little bit of writer's block, he journeys from the Midwest to New York, and there he spends a few days in the company of a terminally ill woman who is living out her final days as a performance artist in the Brooklyn Museum. So that sounds very heavy, and this book definitely is playing with really big themes. It's art and love and faith and addiction, but Kaveh Akbar is such a genius that he handles even the darkest moments with wit and humor. Martyr was a finalist for the National Book Award this year, and it has also been named a Best Book of the Year from Time Magazine and the Washington Post, the New York Times, and probably a few more publications to come because those lists are just now starting to roll in. And then that takes us to There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. This happens to be my second favorite novel of the year. And this is a novel where a single drop of water and the Epic of Gilgamesh are the narrative devices that are connecting characters across continents and across ages. So you've got Victorian era London and modern day London, and then you have ancient Mesopotamia and modern Iraq. And the Thames River and the Tigris River are interconnecting here as being the major movers and shakers of the characters in the book. Elif Shafak is a Turkish writer, and she has won or has been a finalist for just about every European literary award. And it is the sort of book that if you love sinking your teeth into an epic novel that is able to plumb the depths of human experience, this is the book for you. So if you've loved Abraham Verghese, Covenant of Water, or Cutting for Stone, or Anthony Doerr's Cloud Cuckoo Land, this is one for you. This feels like a novel that is going to stand up to the best of epic literature 1 or 2 or even 3 decades from now. It is just so good. And for my last title, I'm just going to briefly mention this one because if you're tuning in tonight, there's a fair chance you're already familiar with this one. I'm talking about James by Percival Everett. But in case you're not familiar with this one, it is a retelling of Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but told from the point of view of Jim, or as he actually prefers to be called, James. Percival Everett has this uncanny ability to balance on the razor's edge between comedy and tragedy. And in reimagining this capital C classic from American lit, he dares us all to reimagine all of the stories we tell. And all of the stories we tell about race or class, identity, history, or even the stories we tell about America itself. James has been a finalist for the Booker Prize. Earlier this week, it just won the National Book Award for Fiction, and has been named a Best Book of the Year from every outlet that produces end-of-the-year type of lists. So if you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to grab a copy. And if you act fast, you might get one of Northshire's few remaining signed copies that they still have on the shelf right now. So thank you so much for tuning in, and that is all from me.
Amazing, Emily. Thank you so much. That was terrific. And also Katrina, thank you so much. That was terrific. As I said after Katrina's, my stacks keep growing and my lists keep growing, which is an amazing thing. Audience, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You can find all of the books that were listed at northshire.com or in our stores, both stores. And you received by email a link to the blog posts, which were also in the chat earlier, with all of the books that were discussed and our missing books from Nikki Much, who could not join us this evening due to illness. Thank you all so much, and I hope to see you at another Northshire event sometime soon. Take care, everyone.